We're going to talk today about creating your height elevations on your building. And we talked about the building being modular, so it's masonry construction, so we have to be modular on an 8-inch increment horizontally, right? And we have to be on an 8-inch module going vertically as well. So let's just look at maybe an elevation of our building. And right now, mine defaulted to these numbers, okay? Saying that level 1 was the main floor plan, and my roof was set at 12'8". I don't know what yours defaulted to, but let's see, does 12'8" work out on an 8-inch module? Yes, okay? You could divide 12'8" by 8 inches, and you would come out with an 8-inch module. So let's say that that is the height of our building. Let's see how that would work backwards to come up with a ceiling height. So what kinds of things on this type of building do we have to take into account as far as how much lower would the ceiling be than that? So it's a masonry building with a flat roof, right? And when you look at flat roof buildings around, you don't see the roof at all, right? Because the roof is actually lower than the top of the wall. There's what's called a parapet, right? Everybody knows what a parapet is? It's when the exterior wall extends above the roof. That's a parapet. So let's assume commercial construction, we want to have, what ceiling height would you recommend? 10 feet, okay? Somewhere around 10 feet. It could be slightly under 10 feet. And I'm not going to be specific with you. It's up to you, but let's not go anything less than, let's say, 9'6", okay? But you could have a 10-foot ceiling. You could have a 12-foot ceiling. Whatever you want to have, it just means your outside walls are going to get taller, right? Okay, so let's just assume that we're going to have a ceiling height of 10 feet. That would be a suspended ceiling like we have here. And then above that suspended ceiling, we're going to have our structure of our building, which are steel beams and bar joists and things like that, right? So we'll be looking at that here in a second. Okay, so at this point, we'll say that at a minimum, your roof's going to be at 12'8". Okay, that leaves us from a 10-foot ceiling, leaves us 2'8" to incorporate steel beams, bar joists, and a parapet wall above the roof, a roof system and a parapet wall above the roof. Okay, I'm going to go to, okay, so this is an example of what your structural cross-section sheets could look like. So you'd have a main cross-section through your building over here in the upper right corner, and then a blow-up of the exterior wall where it meets the roof over here. So, like I just mentioned, if our overall wall was 12'8" to the top of this exterior masonry wall, then the things that are getting covered up are the steel beam that has to be incorporated into the wall between columns, and then the bar joists that sit on top of that beam. Now, steel bar joists are different than wood joists, in typically that they are top chord bearing bar joists. Okay? So they hang off the top of the beams. And we'll talk about that more when we get to drawing our sections, but the height of the bearing point of a bar joist depends on the depth of the bar joist and the length of the bar joist. But for this building, due to our less than 30-foot spans probably, that height of that bar joist bearing is going to be 2.5 inches. That's pretty common up to a 30-foot length. And then once the lengths get longer than that, that height starts getting bigger. It might be 4.5 and 5.5 and so forth. So at this point, we'll assume that that height's going to be roughly 2.5 inches above the steel beam. The steel beam then, between our bar joists, we're going to try to keep those at roughly a 12-inch depth of a steel beam. And we'll talk more about that later. But I think, again, as long as we don't get over I'll say a 30-foot span, we should be able to get by with a W12 by, it could be a W12 by 20 or it could be a W12 by 60. It just is going to be in that 12 range. But you'll notice that we talked yesterday about our columns being somewhat in the wall, in the masonry, because it's 8 inches in from the corners of the building, so we have to be furred around. Well, when you get up to the roof level, there's a steel beam running across that's also incorporated into that wall, right? So we're going to come up with our 8-inch masonry to a certain point, and then we're going to have to go with a smaller block to create the parapet part of the wall so that the steel beam doesn't interfere with the wall. And that's what we're seeing right here. So there's, we're coming up with 8-inch block, and then we're probably going to 6-inch or 4-inch blocks, whatever it works out to on getting up to the top. In this case, our parapet probably won't be very high above the roof, maybe a couple inches, If we wanted it higher, we'd obviously have to go another 8 inches maybe or whatever to get it above. So for the purpose of drawing your floor plan, let's assume at this point that our main level is going to be at 12 foot 8. That'll give us our roughly 9-foot ceiling height. And if you have, some of you may have decided to raise the center part of the building or even go to a 2-story, you'll have to create a higher level, obviously, right? So let's go back and look at our plan a little bit. And let's say that, well, dealing with like the sketch I created yesterday on the board here, that I wanted to raise that center part of my building, which was right in this area here. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click on that name roof, and I'm going to say roof-1 maybe, okay? Because I'm going to put another roof a little bit higher. So then I'm going to take and click on this level and copy it, and I'm going to say I want it up, we'll say 5 feet higher than the other roof. Okay, and that automatically will default to roof 2. Okay, and it tells me that it's 17.8 above the other one. So now that would be, at this point I just guessed at what that should be. After zooming out a little bit and looking at it, whoops, undo that. After zooming out and looking at that, I can kind of tell that's probably a little bit too tall. It's probably going to make my building look a little too tall, so I'm going to change that probably to maybe 15.8. And that would be more appropriate for my building, but your buildings could all be a little bit different. That would be the level of, let's say you're going to put a standing seam roof or a sloping roof up there. That would be the height of the low end of that roof, and it would peak up above that. Okay, so that would be the bearing point of the trusses or whatever you're going to have on that upper level. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, let's go down then from this level down. We talked about putting a basement in this building. And if we put a basement in this building, I'm going to have you, it's commercial construction, so one option would be, again, to go with bar joists and beams and put a metal deck on that and then pour a concrete floor on top of that. That's one option. The other option is to go with precast concrete planks. You all familiar with precast concrete planks? Probably talked about that in your methods and materials class a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna opt for that. So we're going to say that our precast concrete planks are going to be 8 inches in depth and thickness. Okay, with an 8-inch precast plank, we can span up to about 30 feet roughly. But again, we can look that up and find that information out. Precast concrete planks will have, you're going to be required to have a topping of concrete over top of that because the planks are irregular on top. So you're going to have to pour a topping on top of that to level them out. So the precast will be at our level 1 will be the height of our precast. We'll pour topping on top of that, which is going to be 2 inches thick on top of that. Now that might affect our ceiling a little bit. Maybe our 10-foot tall ceiling now became 9 foot 10, because of that. That's not a big problem. We can solve that later. Okay, down in our basement, again, because it's commercial, I want to lower that basement. I want that basement to also be roughly 10 feet tall. Okay, so we're going to I'm going to lower this footing depth first off. I'm going to drop that down to minus 11 for now. And then I'll take the base, the top of the footing and make that 10. Okay. Now my my top of my footing is 10 foot below the top of the precast, right? The precast is 8, so that's now we're 9'4" to the bottom of the precast, and now I got to add a 4-inch floor in here, so now I'm 9 foot with my basement ceiling. That'll work. So okay, so we'll make the top of footing at minus 10 feet, and the bottom of footing then at minus 11 at this point. So if we want to put in another level that is the basement floor, we could put that in. So we could take this top of footing one, copy it up four inches, put a break in it, bring that break up, rename that basement. Okay, and now we have those levels. Okay, so those are the heights I recommend. If you want to make some adjustments to some of them, you can, but that's the process behind doing that. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, one other thing before I stop here is I'm going to go back to my floor plan. And yesterday we talked about that exterior wall and about the columns being in the corners, and what the makeup of the exterior wall was going to be was 8-inch concrete block on the outside, right? Then 2 inches of rigid insulation, and then 5/8 gypsum board on the inside. Did you modify your exterior walls? Okay, so we need to make an adjustment on your basic wall that you threw in to start with. And in this case, I created a new one that I called 8-inch masonry with furring and gypsum board. Okay, I went to edit the type, I duplicated it, went to renamed it, and then I went and kept my structure as being the 8-inch masonry, which is actually 7 5/8 actual. And then I put in a thermal layer, which is the rigid insulation, which is 2 inches, and then the finish, which is gypsum board 5/8 inch. Okay, so that'll be our exterior wall. Okay, when we get to the top of this exterior wall, like I just talked about in the levels, we're going to switch to a thinner wall, right? So a couple ways of doing that. We can put in a reveal, right? So that 8-inch now becomes a 4-inch or whatever it has to be. Or we can bring our 8-inch masonry wall up to a height of whatever it has to be, 10 foot or whatever it has to be, and then on top of that put a different wall. So that's another way of doing it. Sometimes the reveal gets a little messy, and you can just start a new wall up there and make it start at 10 or 11 feet off the floor, whatever it is, and go up to the 12'8" point. Another way of doing it. Okay? So I don't care which way you do that. Thinking of masonry buildings in general, and as you look around campus even or around the community, how do you make a masonry exterior look unique? You can stagger bricks in and out, or blocks in and out, right? So you can have some steps in it. Oftentimes they might thicken the base a little bit to give it a heavier base look with one color of block and then, or one texture of block maybe, and then change it as it goes up. The other thing you could do here is when it gets up to that reveal area at the top, and if you want to, you could go to sticking those blocks out a little bit to create another layering on the outside, right? So that's ways of decorating the exterior of a masonry building, because they can get pretty plain, you know, just being 12'8" tall, rectangle, and no projections or whatever you want. What do you call this? Copings and things on the building. The other thing is talking about that very top of the wall. How are we going to cap off the very top of the wall so that, you know, blocks have holes in them, right? So how do we finish off that top of that parapet? Several ways of doing that. You can put up some wood blocking on top of the wall, treated wood blocking, and put a metal flashing, cap flashing over top of that. That would finish off the top of the wall. You could, in some cases, we can put a stone coping on top of the building. So there are different ways of handling that top of the building. So be thinking about that while you're working on your floor plan maybe, and your elevations, sketches that you've had, and maybe make a little sketch of what you think that top's going to look like and how you might handle it. Okay. Because again, we could add it as a sweep on top of the wall. We can add it as a as just another extrusion or something that we put on top of the wall. So that's going to end what I'm talking about right now. So we need to work on that floor plan. Try to get that as far as we can by the end of Friday, right? Okay.